Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Blue Valentine, starring Ryan Gosling, Michelle Williams, Faith Wladika, forgive me if I said that wrong, John Dolman, and Mike Vogel, directed by Derek Cianfrance. Now, before I get into this movie, welcome to Derek Cianfrance, and this is a fascinating director because he's got a movie coming out called Roofman, and he's done a lot of romance films like this, Place Beyond the Pines, and he has a TV show with Mark Ruffalo that I have yet to see. So let's see how this goes because I haven't seen too many of his stuff. So let's just get into this one. Like, this is one I haven't seen. The only one I have seen in this filmography is The Place Beyond the Pines, and we'll see how this goes. Dean, played by Ryan Gosling, hears the cry of his calls by Frankie, played by Faith Wladika, forgive me if I said that wrong, as she tells him to come outside when she plays with her dollhouse to look for her dog, while they wake up Cindy, played by Michelle Williams, which is normal for kids to wake their parents up, but with their father is a little too much, as they have oatmeal for breakfast. She can go to school, and Dean acts like a man child, as Frankie is a child, and she gets in trouble to Cindy, excuse me. Thanks to Dean, and Cindy takes Frankie to school, and Dean worries about Cindy and Frankie being safe from the world, as Cindy is a nurse of some kind, and Michelle Williams does a tremendous performance as a struggling mother, while Ryan Gosling does deliver a decent performance as a drunk of some kind, and as the audience sees, sometimes he's a drunk. And both actors do some good performances, but are the characters relatable? Cindy, yes, but Dean, no, because I always believe Ryan Gosling is a good actor, but as a person, he seems a little ignorant, in my opinion. But overall, the acting in this is really good. Cindy arrives late to a show where Frankie is involved, and while Dean happens to be there already, and Dean takes Cindy and Frankie to Cindy's dad slash Frankie's grandfather's, Jerry, played by Jamie Dolman, as we move on to a flashback when Dean gets a job as a mover for the elderly, as he does it with his co-workers, and while he shows Walter, an old man named Walter, everything in his belongings, and we go forward when we see the dog is buried in the backyard, and the shots are good to watch, as there are some good shots throughout the movie, and the cinematography is still very steady, which is a good thing in some movies. Dean makes a reservation to a nice romantic hotel room just for him and Cindy, without Frankie, without Cindy's approval, which sounds like a bad marriage situation. And Cindy bumps into her ex-boyfriend Bobby, played by Mike Vogel, whom I reviewed a couple of times in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake from 2003 and Cloverfield. And Cindy tells Dean she saw him at the grocery store, and he flips out about her seeing him, as he's jealous. He's the jealous type, and she tries to make him feel better about the situation by saying he's a loser and fat, and argue about it. And she thinks about when she dated Bobby, as he was a wrestler, and watches him wrestling back in flashback while her grandmother is in a wheelchair. And the writing in this is good, but painfully sad to get through, as this was a hard movie to watch. We flash back to Bobby and Cindy, who are college sweethearts, as he was having sexual intercourse with him, while her grandmother is having a hard time in the wheelchair, and her mother is living with an abusive Jerry, as he treats her like fucking shit, as Dean asks her out and to call him and gives him his business card, while she doesn't want to have anything to do with him, and tells him to go away. And we move forward to their hotel room, which in the future room, while Cindy and Dean calls Frankie while in the room, and she suddenly showers while he asks if she wants anything, and she says no until he walks in the shower with her in it. And do they have chemistry? Most definitely. But my problem is that this is about how they're going to spoiler alert, get divorced by the end of the film, as this is an exploration of their marriage ending And do I like movies like that? Not in particular, as this movie is explicit with it. They dance in their hotel room, which was a great story by director Derek Cianfrance, and we flash back to Cindy ignoring Bobby as he meets her grandmother for the first time while calling Cindy a bitch in front of her, and I get the impression they broke up a while ago. Meanwhile, Dean explains love at first sight, and he takes the bus home to her, well, not home, but to her mother's room, while Walter happens to not be there anymore because he passed away, as he was bringing her flowers while he happens to get her name from her grandmother, and they ride the bus together unexpectedly, and he flirts with her while she tries to blow him off, and their daughter is younger years. Was fine, but to be fair, romance is not always my favorite. Romance is not always my favorite genre, as there are some good ones out there, like Jerry Maguire, to name an example, but unfortunately, this isn't one of them. Dean and Cindy get to know each other as they sing a couple of songs together, while one of them she dances to. We go forward with them back in the hotel having a nice romantic dinner when they talk and rough play with each other, which absolutely confused me on my first viewing. Like, I thought she was upset with him, and I'm not an expert on romance because I only had one girlfriend in my life, but it's been since high school, as nobody finds me attractive. Okay, back to the review. And what bothers me about this movie is we go back and forth, which isn't always a smart choice. Like, my first viewing made this a bit confusing, but watching it a second time for the review, it was making more sense into a somewhat satisfying movie, but not quite satisfying. Dean wants to smooch Cindy, but Cindy isn't taking it, and he asks her what does she want, and they continue having sexual intercourse, and she continuously pushes him away, and she asks him to hit her, and he's going to not do it while she's depressed, and he acts all abusive and shit about it. And we go back to their younger years and how madly in love they are with each other, and that's not confusing as it is, as this is a confusing movie, and they're in love with in a taxi cab. The driver tells them to not have sex in this taxi cab, and next day comes and he gives her a blowjob, which feels weird, as this is a weird movie for damn sure. While Cindy learns she's pregnant with Dean's baby, and Bobby gets abusive about it, and she tells Dean she's pregnant with his kid, he almost before he almost commits suicide because of her not telling him anything. And this whole movie is melodramatic. After telling Dean, Cindy walks away and goes to the doctor about her pregnancy, and the doctor asks her about her sex life, which feels unprofessional and uncomfortable, generally speaking, and sees the body inside her stomach by the computer. And I watch scenes like this, and it makes me fucking uncomfortable. And this is something I brought up in the last Conjuring film, as I'm going to say it again. When I watch these baby scenes being born or whatever, it makes me think of the devil pulling my privates out. And after Judd Apatow's knocked up, I don't like watching scenes like this anymore. And the point I'm trying to make is, it makes people uncomfortable. Fucking stop filming scenes like that and leave it to reality, for Christ's sakes. As we go back to the end of their marriage, as Cindy gets a call from the hospital to tell her to come into work, and she leaves Dean lying on the floor, waking up the next day as he wonders where the fuck she went. As Cindy comes into work and Dean takes a bus there, and this movie is this is a movie that makes me uncomfortable to death. It's not funny to me. Cindy gets some messages from Bobby, all pissed off and shit, and she calls Dean while at work, and Bobby and his friends beat the shit out of him, and we move on to Cindy as a nurse doing some work at the doctor's office, somewhat flirts with her, the doctor does, and I thought, motherfucker, do you know she's married? While Dean comes to Cindy's work, as this motherfucker has been drinking like crazy, and he acts all abusive because she left him at the hotel, and he yells at her and barges into her work, going all bananas in it with her, and by definition I mean craziness. And while taking while talking to her, the doctor comes in and Dean beats up on the doctor like Bobby did to him by beating up his ass in the first place. And Cindy asks Dean for a divorce. And why the fuck are we watching this? Is my problem in my head. Is I'm not in the mood to be depressed by a romance drama movie, and I can experience this in life, for Christ's sakes. We move back to Dean meeting Jerry for the first time ever after getting beat up by Bobby as he comes by for dinner and gets to know Cindy's family while they ask questions about his family, even his mother, who abandoned him at the age of 10 while he never graduated high school. And Dean learns she wants to be a doctor, which is something he learned earlier in their relationship. And he gives her a CD of their song, and they hear it. And don't get me wrong, the song is beautiful, and I am satisfied with the movie, but there were times this movie is confusing at times versus uncomfortable at times. And we get back to the end of the relationship, and Cindy gets fired from her job, and they get back to Frankie as Cindy is upset after the incident at the hospital. And Dean locks Jerry out of his own house while he has to breathe oxygen in which he can't, thanks to Dean locking him out of his own house. And I'm just tired of going back and forth at this point. Cindy continues to ask for the divorce while Dean is afraid she'll grow up in a, and by she I mean Frankie, will grow up in a broken family while Cindy can't take it anymore. While they have an argument until they eventually, Dean agrees to the divorce and has no choice but to leave Frankie behind too, as he has to tell her to come back to her mother. And after we get back to them getting married in a courthouse, and they have no choice but to break it off and talk about their vows, as it is unfortunately broken into pieces. And I feel for the characters, but the climax was a complete downer. And while I recommend the movie at this point, let's talk about it in the rating. I'll give this movie a 6.4 out of 10. Michelle Williams does deliver a tremendous performance, and Ryan Gosling turns in a decent performance, and Cindy is more relatable than Dean, as Dean comes off like a fucking obsessive drunk. And there are some good shots throughout the movie, and the cinematography is very steady, and that's a good thing. And the writing in this is good, but painfully sad to get through, as this was a hard movie to watch. And they have chemistry, but the problem I'm having is the movie is more about how their relationship ends up with a divorce by the end of the movie, and this is an exploration of how their marriage ended. And I don't usually like movies like that in general, as this makes it explicit. While their dialogue in their younger years was fine, as romance isn't always my favorite genre, but there are some good ones out there, like Jerry Maguire, for example. But this was unfortunately not one of them. What bothers me about the movie is we go back and forth, which isn't always the smartest choice. Like on my first viewing, it was a little confusing, and watching this for a second time for this review, it made more sense, which made this a somewhat satisfying movie. And it is a recommendation for the movie, but it is confusing at times when we go back and forth, and it's a weird movie for damn sure, as this whole movie is melodramatic, and it felt like semi-romance drama. And at the end of the day, I wouldn't want to watch this again, as this made me uncomfortable to death. It's not funny to me. Now, I know couples go through this, and I know this, but as a movie, sometimes I'm not in the mood for a depressing movie, as that's what this movie is to be, depressing. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next time I will be back with The Place Beyond the Pines. And until then, smooch, but don't get divorced. Maybe some of you might get divorced. No, never mind that.